Shadow Soldiers Number 6, Shadow Soldier Series. Written by Rath W. Asing. Narrated by Stephen Floyd. Armed Vigilance. Chapter 1. A Conversation. Synopsis. Now back in the U.S., Mac is assigned to Armed Forces Vigilance. His job is to recruit and place patriots within the DOJ and JSOC to ensure another Shining Blade cabal does not regain control. Ben retires and John wanders back into the mountains. The Pentagon and the Capitol settle down, but Sarge is not sure they rooted out the evil that took Megs from WCM. New objectives. I settled into my Alexandria, Virginia apartment. It felt odd being back in the center of what is considered America, so different from the sunny beaches of Mexico. Once hunted by state and federal police, my Alan McElroy record was cleared, and my citizenship was restored. I could use Mac with a WCM-provided backstory for my new DC engagement. My assignment is to find WCM recruits within DOJ and JSOC, assuring conspiracies like the Shining Blade don't regain control. The second-floor apartment covered the entire building's footprint with the front and back entrance. It was located over Mia's Marketplace, which had two drawbacks: the wonderful aromas filtering through the revolutionary structure and the bustle of Washingtonians seeking their evening entertainment. I would need other accommodations if I intended to sleep in the early evenings. It was worth it. The store owner's Sicilian grandmother's food was beyond wonderful. The apartment allowed good views of King Street and the surrounding area, and there were 5 ways to exit quickly, including the front and back doors, a hidden stairway through the kitchen pantry to the basement, and access to the roof, giving me 2 more directions to put distance between intruders and me. I was now downstairs on the sidewalk, meeting my new handler. In case anyone asks, I am Professor Bradford Mac Bentley, an art professor on sabbatical from the University of Arizona College of Fine Arts. The coffee arrived, and I made sure the assorted pastries were placed on Mary Beth Abrams' side of the sidewalk table, continuing the conversation. How long has Red, Joe, and Blue been providing your assignments? Long enough. She looked around as she spoke, indicating some comfortability with the meeting place. Now, here comes Dave Nicholas, the owner of this fine establishment and my landlord. Joe vetted him, and you can use him to pass a message. She looked quickly between the advancing man and me. Listen, getting her attention after Dave left and the street quieted. I am more overt than others working for the spooky ones. If your cover needs protection, we can set up different drops. No, that's all right. Just never been on this side of town. Red said I was to give you a tour of the DC hotspots from his list and put you in front of a number of resources you can use. I figure it will be 4 or 5 days. When do you want to start? I sat back and sipped my coffee. All business, I understand. I have a couch being delivered tomorrow morning. How about starting at 1400 hours tomorrow? Want me to pick you up? Take the King Street bus line into DC proper. It will give you a scenic tour. I will meet you en route. It runs by that corner about 1420 hours. She stood, picked up a chocolate-filled donut with a napkin, placed it in her shoulder bag, and pushed the chair in. Nice meeting you, soldier, and welcome to DC. I watched her blend back into the morning traffic of King Street and smiled to myself. Very interesting handler, Red selected. Armed Vigilance. Chapter 1. Last Missions. Synopsis. Megs' dark journey into revenge comes to a turning point, and she seeks those who can make Carla whole. There is little doubt that the JSOC officer must remain dead, but Carla has a new group of mercenaries she can call family. Last suspect. Maribel Peters Willingham entered the living room and started to place her purse on the table by the door when she stopped. Please come in and have a seat, Maribel. The female voice had a rasp, more a command than a request. Who? Sit. The woman who had been the second lady during the 2 terms of her husband's vice presidency slumped in the chair. When General Calvin Duran was assassinated, I knew I was next. It was just a matter of time. Why, Mary Bell? President Adams took my husband on as a running mate to win the South. It should have been the other way around, but Charles did his duty. As the second term ended, my husband was supposed to be the next president. Her knees kneaded her legs as the pain of her history came out. Her hands stopped moving, and she looked up at the Dark Angel. One botched contract and it all fell apart. Your father would not listen to reason, and I could not take the chance of losing the presidency, so I had him killed. The intruder's flat voice demanded more. The sale of weapons to a Middle Eastern enemy? How was Charles Willingham involved in that? Back then, power was doled out by the committee. 8 corporate leaders chose the presidents and the key senators to control the world's arms race. Conroy Adams had their eye, so he won the primary, and Charles was relegated to water boy. Conroy couldn't tie my husband's shoes, much less run a country. The hatred in the woman's voice was still alive. Go on. General Duran put the plan in action, and my husband covered it up when it went bad. The missions and the army teams were placed under national security seals, and the president was kept out of the loop just in case it blew up. She hesitated and then continued. Johnny Callahan came to Charles when he discovered the shipment was missing and asked his advice. They knew each other back in the Navy. Mary Bell's anger raised her tone. He just would not let it go. I heard them arguing on the patio out back. When he left, Charles couldn't act, so I did. I called the number and ordered the contract to murder your father. You are Meg's, right? The woman nodded but remained silent. So many years of planning to get to the presidency, and a stupid sale of 50 rockets tears it all down. Carla put the revolver away and spoke. Tell me about the number. Who did you call? Oh, they're gone and replaced a long time ago. The committee lasted through Adams's presidency and then disbanded. A new group of retired generals took over running the government puppets, and any favors we were owed dried up. My husband didn't even get 10% of the primary votes. Mary Bell stood and retrieved her purse. I don't know why I kept this, but here's the number for all the good it'll do. Carla accepted a scrap of paper and waited for the woman to retake her seat. What now? Mary Bell whispered. I'm ready. The vengeance is done, Mary Bell. Carla stood in front of the distraught woman. You will turn yourself in and confess to the planning of the murder of Master Chief Petty Officer Johnny Callahan. Do this by tomorrow afternoon or suffer the consequences. Death would be, I am the Dark Angel, and death will be something you yearn for if my vengeance is required, Mary Bell. Accept your punishment and live out your life in prison. Carla turned and walked out of the house. One lead remained. 302-555-1287. Follow-up. Carla sat in her Colorado Springs office with its dark paneling and bookshelves. The Colorado summer filled the air with songbirds as friends happily played with the horses near the barn. Her return from the East Coast and the meeting with Mary Bell Willingham had left her exhausted. She took out the scrap of paper and laid it on the desk. After staring at it for a few minutes, she picked up her phone and dialed the number. The phone rang, surprising Carla. A gruff, guttural voice on the line barked, Speak. Carla quickly disconnected, standing in shock. She knew the voice. Tale of the Biker and the Chef. Chapter 1. Past moments change life. Synopsis. Choices are not always made for good reasons. Changes may come that alter what we expect from life. Finding out about the lie of my birth was the moment I chose to reimagine my life as a mercenary. Today is the day I changed life's unpredictable direction. Pulling the covers off the bed, disregarding years of taunts that neatness is next to godliness, I picked the not-too-stained t-shirt with the unicorn and my well-worn cut-off jeans. Socks and loafered sneakers finished my wardrobe. Coffee and leftover cold chicken sated my hunger as anticipation took hold and sped up my movement through the morning ritual. Dad's Harley awaited, tuned and shined to match my new license to ride. Her glare and silence should have hurt. It was not me to deny placation. Passing by the kitchen table, I whispered, "Bye," and did not turn as I moved out the door. Texas law allows for stupidity, and I let the wind jostle with my hair, free of helmeted protection. The ride needed to bury all that festered in my repressed memory. Major highways demanded alert defense, so I opted for the long misused farm-to-market roads, wandering the Texas hill country with only a vague destination of Comstock, Texas. Now embraced in the solace of the wind, memories of the first long drive to Texas welled up and emoted the pain held down for so long. I realized the bike's speed ebbed and flowed with the memories weeping out. The roadside stand provided a lunch of watermelon and tomatoes, quenched with a 6-year-old's lemonade. Miles to ride before I was done. Southwesterly now, the setting sun began to steal the road from my eyes just as a small church appeared over the rolling hills of cactus. Mary, Queen of the Universe Chapel was locked. My destination was the gate towards the back where rows of stones marked histories forgotten. 12 rows back and 3 from the center, the stone stood half-eaten by weeds and wildflowers. Charles William Bates, 10/15/1950 to 10/15/1950. Held in God's arms. Touching the cold stone wrenched my soul, crying out an unknown question. I fell to my knees, cleaning the stone with my tears. "Hello, Charles. I'm William, your twin. I just found you. Today is the day I change, brother." Ravages of Love. Chapter 1. Some encounters hurt. Synopsis. Life does not come with an instruction manual, and love, well, love is something that changes everything. A mercenary's heart looks for a place to rest, but love's calling fulfills so much more. I had no reason to stay in the downtown motel of Baytown, Texas. My side had healed, and the cops closed the case, leaving me free of judicial questioning. But I remained, held there by my second encounter with her. Her blonde hair in tortured cornrows stretched across her skull, smudged the street grunge, yet enhancing the freckles that danced across her face. Her determination to run from the man with a knife triggered my movement. My years of military and mercenary vocation reacted, reaching him just as he began to thrust the knife into her exposed belly. Tumbling down the steep grade, we fell, the knife now a part of my side, his throat captured in my hands. His head landed first, ending the battle, but my side found the railroad tracks, pushing the knife in deeper. Yesterday. Our first meeting was so much nicer in the coffee shop with bustling business execs, one-upping each other with their trendy drink pronunciations. I found a quiet corner and watched the circus play out until the work bell rang. 9:15. The crowd, a memory, allowing the woman behind the counter to catch her breath. Our eyes met, and unforced smiles filled the distance, making my feeble introduction a bit easier. "I've been watching you." She placed her hands on her hips, but the smile remained. "You some kind of stalker?" "No. Just watching your blonde curls dance in the morning light." "What is your preference?" She was not returning to her duties. Rather, she was inviting the conversation to continue. Strong, tall, and leave a little room for cream. She nodded, and I moved over to the counter. "When my shift ends here, I would like a walk in the park and dinner by the docks." Her smile held so many promises, and her words confirmed the possibility. The thoughts of something special began to take over my daydreams as I made reservations for dinner at a place that also had dancing. The walk, dinner, and dancing were enchanting in contrast to the next morning. Today, the coffee shop was abuzz, but not with normal banter. She was missing, and the gossip ranged from deranged lover to international spies. It took 3 patrons' recollections and a private conversation with the store owner out by the dumpster. I traced her steps toward the docks and the alleyway when I caught a glimpse of her attempting to flee from the man on her bike. The chase and the one-sided battle ensued, leaving me lying in my blood with the man unconscious beside me. Sirens hurt my ears. Then her perfume embraced my consciousness. A teardrop and a kiss on my lips. My view of her faded, passing into darkness until the cops revived me. Who? The name on her employment record was Stacy Bellingham, and she rode into town 6 weeks before on a broken-down motorbike with 62 cents to her name. It was time for me to go to work because her history was less than 6 months old. My mercenary experience knew that this was more than an isolated incident. The first calls I made were to Sergeant Derek Brown. They would gather the resources I needed to find her. I did have the helmet she wore and sent it to Derek for fingerprinting. It turned up a missing person from 7 years ago, Stella Richards Mosby. What, when, where? You already know the girl, yesterday in Baytown, Texas. Need anything else? Why? Well, that is a story that includes the ravages of love. Planned. Chapter 1, One Moment. Synopsis. Revenge served cold as an enjoyable dessert. All my skills went into tracking down and serving my form of justice on the ones who killed my friends. But finding out I was being watched shocked me out of my solitary life. The FBI agent walked away, looking back 3 times with a questioning stare that always leads to recognition. I gave him a few hours to realize where he saw me last. 3 years, 6 months, and 14 days ago, I fled the crime scene that set me up for multiple murders. I had 2 choices, as is customary: stay and risk imprisonment, or leave and handle the perpetrators on my own. Clara Jennings' body lay in the muddy ditch with 2 other men I did not know. Her death would tie me to the murders. The crime was not her fault. She had one dinner with a returning vet, and her life was forfeit. Jeff Bantry, FBI agent and one-time Army friend, filed his report 3 hours after spotting me, locking in my fate. It didn't matter. I left the area, built a new identity, and spent 3+ years taking out the mob boss who set me up. Unlike the TV shows, I had no way of clearing my name. My life after service was not lived on the legal side of the law. It was just easier to handle the murderers on my own. Carmine Donato, Albert Donato, and Barry Feldman died in a car crash on the Croton Dam in upstate New York. The freezing water and the hours it took to retrieve the bodies ended any forensic opportunities to find the poison I used. Officer Robert Carlton, Detective Murray Brooks, and sometimes hooker Mary Blessings were found in what was documented as a murder-suicide love triangle. The fact that both cops possessed evidence of their illegal activities helped quickly move the file to the closed case shelves. 2 others remained on my list. Bertram Officinal disappeared the day the Donatos were found in the reservoir and made his way to Bermuda, where I lost track. He was the attorney that kept the Donatos out of prison. With the Donatos dead, he had no protection and ran. The other would leave his apartment in moments. David Wellmark, the assistant district attorney for New York, resided in a brownstone on the Upper West Side of New York City. He didn't look up at the chauffeur holding the door to the limo, and he didn't notice me 6 doors down on the opposite side of the street. His chauffeur would bring him to 28 Liberty Street. His office on the 16th floor was earned by solving sensational cases like mine. His ability was supported by his connections with the New York Underground. A Donato lieutenant gave him my name, making me the prime suspect for the murders. David Wellmark is the next one on my list. the inside man in the New York Attorney's Office who tied me to the murder of Carol and 2 men 3 years, 6 months, and 14 days ago. The setup. My appearance has gone from a neat and tidy Army Ranger with close-cropped graying hair to a shaggy-headed hippie bum wandering the streets of New York. The watch, easily recognized as a fake Rolex, held a micro camera, making it simple to gather the details I needed from the surveillance. If my FBI buddy caught a glimpse of me now, he would not recognize me. I know. He passed me twice in the last 4 weeks and ignored me. I tracked Wellmark for 16 days and had his schedule down. There were 2 places I could use to take him out: the Equinox Sports Club at 160 Columbus Avenue near his brownstone, and Wednesday night's rendezvous with the tall blonde at Sal and Rose's restaurant at 283 Amsterdam Avenue. My background. Buzz Martin is the name I used to get into the service. The birth certificate and other documents were fake, but it was a time of necessity for the United States Armed Forces, and my 18 years of service were stellar. I was a kid from the Bronx that needed to get out of town or face the wrath of a beat cop on 93rd Street. Knowing my dad, Connor McCoy, the cop had it in for me. Zed Bender is the name of the creased library card in my wallet today. It would hold up to quick scrutiny, and my fingerprints were changed in the U.S. databases, so my old name would not pop up. The name Connor McCoy Jr. was left on the streets of New York. I wanted nothing to do with it or my father and his sick habits. He rotted in Rikers for raping and killing my sister, and I was on my own. An Army Ranger lends many of the skills normally meant for spies. My 18 years gave me special skills, and I used them continually. Except for the run-in with a guy called Red 2 years ago, I remain in the shadows. Time to act. The 2 men on the park bench watched me as I passed by. Turning, I split the hoagie roughly in half and handed it to them. Their constant hunger thanked me by biting right in. I popped the Coke, placed it between them, then took out 4 20s and placed them on the bench. My days of wandering the parks with bums was coming to an end. Shower, shave, and new duds would transform Zed Bender into Parker Robinson, a waiter at a high society in New York. A crisp white shirt, creased black trousers, and properly polished black shoes made me stand out as I entered Sal and Rose's restaurant. The day manager stood by the reservations desk and stopped what he was doing. "You must be Parker Robertson." I nodded and handed him a resume. "Punctual. Good. You will find Arthur in the back. He will show you around and prepare you for the dinner rush." He had accomplished the introduction and passed me off, returning to the reservations book and his other duties. Arthur was both efficient and easy to follow. I have experience as a waiter, and this upscale place was easy to learn. It was Monday, and I had 2 days to prep for my Wednesday rendezvous. Psychopath. Chapter 1. Memories Remain. Summary. Malady, curse, or gift. The world has diagnosed me as a psychopath. Functioning, but broken all the same. I still wonder if I found the world of mercenaries or if they found me. Meeting Tressa McKendry? Now that is a quandary I may never figure out. The 3 bodies dripped blood on the concrete floor. The precise firing allowed me to limit ammo use to 6 bullets, 1 in the heart and 1 in the head for each. Maurice Malapert, Gracie Bunford, and Thomas Dumais slumped in their bindings where I intended to leave them. My mission was complete. It took me 15 days to stalk and apprehend the 3, not tied to chairs in the dank basement of an abandoned factory. It was not a sanctioned mission, and no paycheck awaited its successful completion. I saw Gracie Buford slap a small girl for getting in her way, and Malapert laughed at the child's tears. Don't get me wrong, I did not act out in anger. I don't believe I have ever truly reacted to anger. I just reacted to the scene and did what I do best. I am currently using Dan Price as my alias. It has been ages since anyone called me by the name on my birth certificate. Anthony James Donnelly was born in a Yonkers hospital ward to a drug-addicted woman who died 4 hours later. Two shrinks scrutinized my youth, and the girl from my one failed attempt at high school romance labeled me a psychopath. To their taunts and jeers, I shrugged my shoulders and moved on. Choices. At 18, in foster care, knowing full well that the Yonkers social worker was at her wit's end, I chose to emancipate myself. Taking 2 sets of underwear, my favorite Band of the Candles t-shirt, and a new pair of jeans, I walked out using the school bus to get to the U.S. Army Recruiting Center in Mount Vernon. They seemed happy, and I never looked back. I needed the forged GED since both 2nd and 5th grades were repeated, and I was currently only a sophomore. But there was a need for soldiers in the Middle East, and I didn't mind being considered cannon fodder. 6 years later, I was part of a special forces group that handled interesting missions not meant for the regular troops. Not so much wet work or spy stuff, but missions difficult to approve by Army officers in the U.S. Congress. An incident in Afghanistan, while approved by my chain of command, made it unlikely I could re-enlist. It didn't matter. My first lieutenant from Special Forces left 2 years ago, and I had his number in Brussels. It was time to learn a new trade, and the mercenary business was in line with my talents. Lee was doing a bang-up business in hostage recovery and other not-so-lawful activities, and was happy to teach me the ropes. I worked with him for 5 years, rising to his number 2. A botched hostage situation ended his company and his life, leaving me on the streets again. I moved back to the United States and set up a pad in Mount Vernon, New York, beginning my new career in the shadows. I had the skills from Special Forces, the connections from Europe, Lee's nest egg of cash, and a desire to work alone on cases that suited me. Run-ins. 6 months after establishing myself in the U.S., I found a case of a missing teenager in Yonkers, published in the Help Wanted section of Mercenary Monthly. It only took me 4 days to locate the perps. They were young and foolish, stashing the girl in their gang headquarters. I estimated 16 minutes to free the girl. Methodically, I entered, taking out the biker guarding the garage door to the abandoned factory with a knife, removed 3 playing video games in the garage with a silenced pistol, and proceeded to the office on the 2nd floor, finding the gang leader and his girlfriend in no condition to defend themselves. Once they were out of action, I opened the door and squatted at eye level with the bound and gagged girl. Time to get you back to your parents. I need you to do what I say when I say it, okay? She shook with fright, but nodded her head in the affirmative. I'm going to remove your hand and leg bindings, and then I will cover your eyes and guide you out of here. No need for you to see the mess I made. It took just 2 minutes to make it to the entrance and 1 silenced bullet to remove the gang member returning with pizza. 37 minutes later, I pulled into the driveway of a residential home on the expensive side of Yonkers. The sobbing girl was delivered to her mother, payment received, and word began leaking out news of another dark soldier in town. It made me smile. You may not know this, but psychopaths have feelings too. Angel Power. Chapter 1. The Call. Synopsis. A warrior fighting against the abuse of women calls WCM to help her with the human trafficking ring and finds much more, bringing together mercenaries around the world to fight this blight on humanity. Dave Christian maintained his calm, allowing Sherry to vent her frustration. The recon had gone horribly wrong when a full team of heavily armed mercenaries descended on the farmhouse just as they were about to enter. 6 weeks of diligent research and surveillance were trashed as the mercs set up a permanent camp, fortifying the farm's perimeter. She is going to get away. Darlene Campbell is going to escape and we can do nothing. The last dish made it to the draining rack with a thud. I promised Molly's mother that... The tears exploded, and David gathered her into his embrace, not to stop the flow of tears, but to share her grief. What can we do now? Her sobs held back any other words. Sit here. Let me make a call. I have an idea. David guided her to the love seat in the small apartment and picked up his phone, swiping until the word Sarge appeared. Selecting the WCM leader, he put it on speaker mode. Speak. The gruff command did not deter the ex-detective from Fort Worth. Sarge, I have a case that needs your team. Sherry and I need some help. Dave, haven't heard from you two for a few years. Still traveling the country? There was a muffled shout and then silence. Sarge, we uncovered another sex slavery network here in the U.S., which is too big for us to handle. Dave stopped and awaited his reply. I got Angel here. We are on board, but we are going to meet at another location. Can you two get to Colorado Springs by Friday? We're in New Jersey. We'll catch a flight out of Newark and arrive Thursday evening. Send me the address. Dave looked at his wife, her eyes showing a growing hope. You send the flight information and I will have someone pick you up. See you Friday morning. Before the phone disconnected, David could hear the old sergeant barking orders to Angel and her laughter. Reasons. Sherry Beaulieu and David Christian lived a life of travel and adventure on the highways of the United States. Their articles in Boots and All were now viral on the internet and often duplicated in other magazines. Their other activity, removing rapists from the country's streets, continued. Having just finished an article on the historic wonders of Clifton, New Jersey, the two began working on a case of a raped and murdered girl. Their article centered on the Hamilton House Museum and went viral on the internet. The musical was still creating interest in Revolutionary history. Their other work centered on a small girl who was raped and murdered just 3 weeks prior to their arrival. The distraught mother wept as newscasters prodded her for the next big soundbite. Ebony Ruth Meadows of Teaneck, New Jersey broke down, unable to speak about the horrendous murder of her child Molly. It was then that Sherry whispered out of earshot of the TV that she would avenge the child's death. Initial takedown. Teaneck and Clifton were separated by 14 miles of New Jersey suburbia. While a bit skimpy on research, the takedown of a rapist, Ronald Parkham, was accomplished before the rest of New Jersey sipped their first cup of coffee. Ronald's pleading made them change tactics and relocate him to a no-tell motel in Fairlawn for questioning. In pleading for his freedom, the rapist-turned-murderer gave up his boss, Darlene Camphill, and indicated he knew of others in Hoboken who were part of a human trafficking ring. Sherry set up their surveillance of Camphill's farm and gathered resources to help from all the right places. DB, Detective Benjamin Collingsworth, now a member of WCM, had received the first call. DB quickly had David call Carol Alicia Farnsworth, Lieutenant Commander of Detectives for Toms River PD, to handle the perp and dig out what information she could before processing him. That solved the problem of housing their perp. 9 hours after delivering Ronald Parkham to Toms River, they received information that the two cousins of Parkham were beaten and killed in Hoboken. 1 hour later, Carol Farnsworth instigated a conference call that had everyone stop their investigations. Listen carefully. I had a police officer here who called the Hoboken docks a few minutes after Parkham was locked in the holding cells. This is too big, considering the response you had at the farmhouse. We need to step back and build the right team for this mission. Carol stopped talking to allow questions and concerns. Sherry spoke first. We have Sarge and WCM building a team. Everyone waits. DB, where are you now? I'm on an assignment in Argentina. Ask for Mac to join in. He is in D.C. and can put resources together for you. I'll send you contact information. Carol, can I count on you? Sherry asked before anyone could interrupt. Sure, I'm on board, if nothing more than to coordinate New Jersey resources, she continued. I know Sarge and his team and can work with them. You better put Parkham in solitary. These guys won't want him talking. Already done. I moved him to a small township under an alias and had a hooded perp paraded via state trooper van to a high-security facility in Fort Dierks. He arrived and is locked away. Let them play with the feds while we keep Parkham out of the fray. Good. We will contact WCM and update you all in 48 hours. David took over the conversation and hung up quickly. Travel. The hornet's nest they uncovered was beyond their normal hunt. The call to Sarge eased David's mind and had Sherry focused on the bigger picture. This is like that time in Florida. Maybe it's the same network. Sherry finished packing her travel bag. They were used to traveling light and looked more like hikers getting ready for the Appalachian Trail than hunters of human traffickers. It'll be good to see the WCM team, David called from the kitchen. Hey, you think that European gal will be brought in too? Gloria? I hope so. She was really helpful the last time. Sherry hoisted her knapsack and headed for the door. You ready? Yeah. Made sandwiches to finish off the cold cuts. We only have mustard. He stood beside her, looking out the open door of the small bungalow they rented for the month. Everything's in order, and the keys are on the counter for Mrs. Wren. Let's move out. We have 3 hours to get to the airport. Even with traffic, that's plenty of time. The rental car would take them to the airport, and their bikes would remain in storage in Clifton. American Airlines shuffled its passengers into the long tube, placing them in first class. We have about 4 hours before we land. David handed Sherry a pillow. Get some sleep. We'll be in Colorado Springs by 2 p.m. A guy named Buddy sent me a text that he'll meet us there. Guardian Sanctuary. The fence-lined driveway finally ended, and the SUV pulled up to the front of the huge log cabin. Sergeant Angel rocked on the porch, and a woman stepped down to greet them. I'm Gene Seraphin of DARE, and I will get you settled in and then introduce you to the team. By this time, Angel was wrapping up Sherry in a big hug, and Sarge had a firm grip on David's hand. Come with me, Sherry. I have a surprise. Angel tugged Sherry up the stairs and into the kitchen, where 2 women sat drinking tea. Sherry smiled, then gasped as Carla turned to face the new arrival. I thought... It is a long story, and we will get you up to speed, dear. Senator Hillary Carroll embraced Sherry, whispering in her ear, We have a lot to catch up on, but let's get our team ready for now. Everyone in the meeting room in 5. The command from Jean had feet pounding through the halls, and Carla linked arms with Sherry to guide her just as David entered the kitchen. I see you brought your arm candy, Carla giggled. Great to see you, David. I'm Carla and the head of DARE. We are meeting down the hall.